Um, well, we've been speculating a little bit already about the future of the MCU in relation to that Loki season 1 finale. Well, we're going to do that a little bit more right now. Loki was announced to have big implications for the MCU moving forward, Phase 4 and beyond. Well, we know now why, because we have seen Kang in what version ever it was, and Kang is one of the big villains in Marvel comic history. So I think I was not exaggerating when I was saying this was a Thanos-like moment, but the Thanos head turn in Marvel's The Avengers. I think this was certainly on the same level. So I'm going to round the panel again and ask what their expectations are about the future of the MCU now that Kang has shown up, which movies might be affected in the future. Well, now we are dealing with multiple timelines. Would that also affect what if the new animated show that is starting to stream on August 11 on Disney Plus? Will it affect that show? I mean, will those actually be stories from other timelines, etc.? We're going to discuss that right now, and well, let's start with Taylor because well, I always like to hear what he has to say.
Well, the future of the MCU is definitely going to be impacted by this show. We know Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania will have some. Kang is going to be in that, at least the same actor. We know Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is certainly going to be impacted by the events of this show. I don't think What If will be impacted. What If is completely anthology of alternate possibility. If you want to pretend each episode is an alternate universe, that's fine, but it's not going to have any wider impact. I'm going to give a cautionary note here to the MCU because I know Kevin Feige listens to every word I say.
But, as you should. I mean, I always listen to you.
And before Lord Deathman jumps all over me, I know that the Marvel Comics and Marvel Universe has always had a cosmic element to them. But they've got to be very careful not to lose that personal element, okay? I'll be honest, sometimes my eyes just glaze over when I'm listening to or reading you guys on the boards talking about all this cosmic gobbledygook. I don't care. Okay, and how much more powerful can a villain be, for God's sake? The MCU started out with a guy in a metal suit. How is he supposed to stop a guy who traverses multiple universes at will and creates realities and stuff? Okay, and on a literary level, okay, there is more impact from Aunt May being in danger than in an alternate universe being in danger. Okay, I am a street level superhero guy. I am a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man guy. I want to see Spider-Man and Kraven duking it out on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. I want to see, Iron Man and Whiplash fighting it out in some, swamp somewhere. I want to see Captain America and Red Skull going at it. I want to see the Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom. I just want to say that I stopped reading the comics when they became so freaking complicated and so esoteric and so pretentious. And so much so that you had to read every single episode or every single issue in order to stay aware of what was going on. Up until this point in the MCU, as integrated as it all is, which it is beautifully, you could literally drop into any movie and enjoy it all by itself without having seen any other movie. All right. So that's just a cautionary note. Don't lose that personal part. Remember what Stan Lee said, okay? Stan Lee said, the Marvel Universe is the one outside your window. And that's because it makes that personal contact that with the reader, with the viewer. Okay, you can see yourself in there. It's not Gotham, it's not Metropolis, it's New York City, all right? It's Queens, it's Brooklyn, it's LA, San Francisco, East Coast, West Coast. Yes, there's Wakanda and Liberia because you can't insult other countries. But so I just want to, this cautionary tale, don't let Don't let the personal side of it, don't let the one-on-one hero versus villain action side of it get overwhelmed by the cosmic, oh my god, this is so huge, it takes 12 pages of text on a message board to explain it all stuff. Okay? And I'll get off my soapbox here at the moment.
No, I think you have an excellent point here, actually. You know, everybody knows that I'm not a real big fan of multiverse stuff. Until now, what Marvel's doing, I think is great, but I have some fears about the future. We have discussed before on the podcast, like No Way Home, the rumors surrounding that movie. Well, Jeff, how do you feel or think what's going to happen in the future of the MCU now that we have seen Loki, and how it will impact the rest?
Well, like Taylor said, I don't think What If will be impacted really. I think that, I mean, Taylor really, pointed out quite a bit already that I wanted to say, but I understand where Taylor's coming from. He's talking about like the Earth-based heroes and like the Earth-based stories. Like that's where the personal connections are typically built. And like we do need to like pay our respects to that aspect. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm really looking forward to characters like Daredevil and the Punisher, and Ghost Rider, being in the MCU. Like, I mean, I can't wait. Like, I'm really chomping at the bit to see Ghost Rider. I mean, I love him, and I can't wait to see what Marvel Studios is going to do with that character. But I feel like, we're close to getting Doctor Doom. I really do. I really that's my prediction. I really honestly think that they're going to drop Doctor Doom in the mix, just the same way that they did Kang. But I honestly think that it would be cool if they would do a Doctor Doom Disney Plus almost, and they did a origin story for him where they actually explained his childhood and his relationship with his mother, and you throw Mephisto in there, maybe we actually get him this time. That's a definite big prediction of mine, is that I think we're going to get Doctor Doom. I thought maybe we'd see Doctor Doom in Wakanda Forever. Now they're saying Namor's going to be in it. We still might get some kind of Doctor Doom appearance in it potentially. But as far as how the multiverse aspect is going to affect things, there's already a lot of people out there that I don't agree with them, to be honest with you, that really fundamentally believe that Marvel's going to use the multiverse angle to bring in the X-Men and to bring in the Fantastic Four potentially into the MCU. I don't really see them going that way personally. That's not how I would do it. I don't feel like that's organic to me to bring the X-Men out of the multiverse, really, frankly. But there are people who believe that the direction things are going to go.
Yeah, but it feels a bit easy, right? If you need to bring in a character, just use we're gonna open up that timeline. Those characters just flood in from that timeline, and hey, now they're in the main timeline. It feels like easy cop out. Basically,
it doesn't make sense. Lord Deathman, I'm sure, would understand where I'm coming from when I say that it doesn't make sense from a comic book standpoint. Taylor knows what I'm talking about. It doesn't make sense from a comic book standpoint for the X-Men and mutants to not have already been in the MCU. If you just dropped them from the multiverse, it would make no sense. Why didn't we have mutants before that? To me, it just doesn't make any sense from an MCU Marvel 616 kind of aspect.
I have a feeling, and we will get the Eternals movie we spoke about earlier, where you have a race of super beings being on Earth for thousands and thousands of years. And now they're going to get involved because there's another race of super beings trying to do bad stuff. Basically, if I had read the synopsis right. But they have been on the background. And, mutants, that could be the same thing, actually. It's easy, but we will just have to wait and see how they will do that. But if you read Kevin Feige's words correctly, it will take a while before they even show up. The mutants and the X-Men, I don't see that happening before 2024, 2025. But okay, Biz, we've seen Kang. Avengers 5, Secret Wars. Is that a possibility? 2024?
Yeah, sure, it could be. Yeah, like I mean, that's already a decent amount of years for that kind of like team up movie to be done. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But with everything else going forward, I mean, I wouldn't be too worried about like the Earth-based like stories. Like for example, we're still getting She-Hulk and Moon Knight. They would be street level. Spider-Man, obviously, he's a street level hero. But it's a bit interesting how they're going to play that out, because it's going to be involved, I'm guessing, the multiverse as well. So I can understand the concern there. But yeah, we'll definitely see more street level. There's not going to be all like space and like, for example, Captain Marvel. But yeah, I do understand the concerns. But with everything else, like with the mutants and also yeah, Blade, that's coming up. That'll be definitely have like a supernatural edge to it. But again, like it won't be spacey or anything like that. But where's it all gonna go? Yeah, like, does anyone remember that theory? I mean, that not a theory. It was apparently like a leak, like a Reddit leak. I think this came up after it came out after Endgame, that movie, and it pretty much said that there might be two major villains for the next saga of the Marvel the cinematic universe. So it's like with Jeff was saying, it might be Kang, but it might be also someone else. Like it could be Doom, it could be Norman Osborn. There are theories where it was apparently like it could be Flash's dad, because we never know about his parents. It could be that he could be Norman Osborn. But yeah, we'll see. But I have no doubt that whatever Marvel's gonna do, it's gonna be great. I mean, I have no concerns about that.
Lord Deathman, last but not least.
Thank you, sir.
How do you see this going forward? I mean, the possibilities are endless right now.
They really are. And before I sort of get into my take about it, first off, I just want to give the fans a thumbs up, even though the champions beat them out on a lot of those theories. I do like the energy of speculation that we got from the fandom this time around from Loki. So if you're listening and you're a fan of the show, just want to give you a thumbs up. Thanks for listening to us, and you guys were awesome in terms of the theories that we managed to pull together. So listening to the panel and hearing the concerns and the trepidation and maybe a little of the excitement for what comes next, you know, I have to say, when I think about the future of the MCU and the way Loki might be changing things, there's a mixture of a lot of excitement for big new ideas and new villains and new characters and new conflicts. But then there's also a side of me that's really terrified that it could really all collapse. I side with Jeff and Taylor and Biz about the whole idea around human drama. You never want that to sort of take a back seat just because you want to do a big fancy speculative fiction idea. And I think Marvel,
is that really a danger? I mean, we just had a
Black
Widow movie where we we had a floating fortress in the sky, but we also had a lot of human drama. I think Marvel Studios has a track record of balancing those kind of things beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't really see a danger there. So I do think that no matter how big the ideas or how big the scale gets, they're never going to lose sight of the idea that this is about people interacting with each other and conflicting with each other, et cetera, et cetera. But the multiverse is a controversial thing. It always has been amongst comic book fans, because some people feel it's kind of a dumb idea to explore all these variations on a different character or all these different choices they might have taken. And some people feel like, oh, wow, it's a pretty exciting way to get some what if style stories and that kind of thing. And for me particularly, I've never seen any harm in the idea of a multiverse. But I will say that I am a hardline purist around the idea of keeping the MCU isolated from some of these things that other folks have been doing with Marvel branded characters like Sony. And no disrespect to Sony or what Fox did with the X-Men. Those proto sort of early 2000s superhero films really set the tone for what the MCU could do now. And there wouldn't be an MCU without properties like the early Spider-Man films from Raimi, the X-Men films. We all know the list. But I really don't want to see like Tobey Maguire, take over for Tom Holland as Spider-Man, or we bring in the old gang of X-Men people into this universe and we kind of use the multiverse as a way to do and to expedite getting all the characters into a single universe. I would see that as a failure. I can't even picture a story possibility that makes that all work, that I like and kind of doesn't feel like a cop out. So there's where I get nervous when you start talking about multiverse, because it does feel like they're going to use it as a way to sort of bring all these other things together. And honestly, while a lot of those films were great for their time, I don't feel that they're operating at the same level as the MCU. New things come out. I'm not saying that they're better. I'm not saying that they're worse, but this is operating at a different level of sophistication in terms of the way the stories continue from movies to TV shows. The interconnectedness is just unprecedented. So again, I don't think you can just kind of drop all of those earlier properties into this. And there are a lot of fans that want that. They're like, I love Hugh Jackman. I don't know how many, you could spend 20 seconds on YouTube and find 200,000 people that I'm like, this guy's destined for a wheelchair. No disrespect to Hugh Jackman. He's a great actor, but I don't kind of want to see old man Wolverine and Logan in the MCU before I get to see a proper Wolverine in his prime, right? So that's where I'm coming from. But overall, I'm pretty confident in the brand. And I think that's where we all have to sort of let go, stop the 12-page conversations that Taylor's talking about. Don't make it into a federal case and just kind of see where the MCU takes us with this, because they haven't done us wrong thus far, So I think it's just going to take a little bit of a leap of faith.
Okay. Yeah, any day now that No Way Home trailer will drop. And I have a feeling they waited for the Loki finale for a reason, because they're actually pretty late. Sony has a history of starting their marketing way earlier than they did now. Also could be pandemic related, of course, but I have a feeling there are some implication from Loki into No Way Home. I agree with you that I have expressed this before on the podcast, so this is not a surprise for the people listening or watching. That I don't want those properties to be connected to the MCU in any way. I just don't want a movie where a guy sits in a crayfish tank in the middle of a restaurant to be connected to the MCU, basically. Taylor, you had a follow-up comment.
Yes, just to follow up. One, I don't think there's any danger of those earlier iterations becoming part of the MCU in any way that matters. I don't think that's a danger at all. Now, the current Sony, whatever they're calling it, Sony Universe of Marvel characters, is that what they're calling it now? There's a possibility of that becoming sort of part of the MCU, and I'm not too worried about it. I think if it's done right, it'll be okay. But there's also a possibility that it won't become part of the MCU. But just to follow up on another point I wanted to make about the future of the MCU, can we please have a pause on mystery villains? Okay, we've done it 4 times in a row now, and I understand it creates a lot of conversation and gets eyes looking at the properties. But like I said, 4 times in a row, who's behind? Is it Mephisto in WandaVision? No, it turns out it's Agatha. Who's the power broker? Well, we found out that. Who's Taskmaster? Let's talk for 10 years about who's Taskmaster is. And lastly, who's behind the TVA? The next Marvel property that comes out, I want the villain in the very first opening scene to say, "I'm the freaking villain." Okay?
Actually, not counting What If, next Marvel property to come out in live action is Shang-Chi, and we already know who the villain is. It's gonna be Wenwu, or as we will get to know him, the Mandarin. So. I don't foresee a twist in that movie. I mean, they have done enough Mandarin twists in the MCU already. I like that still. I still like that twist, but I don't see them doing that twice with the same villain, Taylor.
I'm just worried about him getting a little bit into a rut here, and it may be because of the timing due to COVID, the timing of all these things coming out. But seriously, 4 times in a row, we've had a mystery villain.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. Lord Deathman, you had a follow-up comment.
I did, and I do want to talk a little bit about villainy in the MCU just in general. And I'm also fatigued at people constantly speculating themselves into these weird corners and trying to outguess what people did like years ago. I'm like, this show got produced like it was in the can like maybe 9 months ago. So you're not going to be able to retroactively, through an act of will, change what the writers already did. Although we have seen that they've been able to make big changes to the show on the fly in terms of getting rid of big chunks of what they'd planned to do, but not on the scale that fans are imagining. And I have to chalk up a lot of that speculative activity towards fans who are just trying to exercise a creative muscle, people trying to keep the conversations going in social media, and probably jerks like myself who know a lot about the comic books and kind of just want to guess right. Although that's really not my MO. I try to use my powers for good. So, you know, I just want to say I am also deeply fatigued with villain speculation and speculation of all kinds in general. But I realize that that's how the younger fandom sort of relates to each other when enjoying this type of stuff, and you can't skirt them forever, right? So I am trying to adapt, probably unsuccessfully. But I also wanted to just make a general point about villainy in the MCU. There is a host of fans or anti-fans or detractors or critics or whatever you want to call them that have said since the very beginning that Marvel has a problem with villains, right? They either die too quickly or they're not villainous enough, or, you know, whatever your villainous itch is. The MCU, by and large, I think it's a lot of criticism for not being able to scratch that. And whenever I get into a conversation about that, I always want to tell people, you know, it's Disney. For all the great things that they've done with the MCU, they have been really slow to push the envelope on darker material. So villains in the MCU are not really villains as you might understand them from the comic books. They're people with opposing viewpoints, right? And you take someone like Thanos, villain, yes, you know, brutal in his tactics, but really when you think about it, he's like trying to do something that he thinks is good. Clearly he's insane, but you know, you're supposed to be on the opposite spectrums of two arguments. Where DC goes with their villainy is they push full on into sociopathy, into psychopathy. They push to places where people are evil. You know, it's like, dude, I'm not even trying to have a discussion with you or, you know, see it your way. I'm completely insane and I want to kill all these people. That's exactly what I want to do. And Disney's not going to go there. I like, if you can't get that as an MCU fan, you really need to get out of the fandom now, because Disney's never going to push that way. In fact, the closest they've gotten thus far for me was Black Widow. Dreykov is a sociopath who really is a deep misogynist in that younger girls seem to be a throwaway item to him that are completely disposable. That's villainy. Right? Not, you know, I'd like to do something nice for the universe and make sure that everybody can have a Coca-Cola and nobody has to wait in line for one. That's Thanos's, you know, big motif. So, but end of rant. I just want to say that about villains and villainy in the MCU.
No, I think we're all in agreement here. So. Yeah, if we're gonna look at the slate that's coming up, I mean, we're all in agreement that What If will not be affected by Loki in whatever way. Shang-Chi, highly unlikely. Miss Marvel, I don't see it. Eternals, No Way Home, probably. Hawkeye, not likely. And then we already get very close to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which actually will end this, or no, because we have Ant-Man a year later and we know Jonathan Majors is going to show up. So how long will Kang be affecting the MCU? The last round, then we will close the review. Will it be years? Will it be Avengers 5? Will it last longer? Tell me, Jeff.
I don't know. I mean, I think I think what you pointed out earlier, as far as like Avengers 5 coming out in 2024 potentially or whatever, that's kind of like along the lines of what I like forecasted a year ago or 2 years ago. You know, when I was making content then, and I was talking about when we get like another after Endgame, you know, when we get another Avengers movie. I thought it was going to be probably about like 2024 or so. So I'd say that I think that's pretty accurate. I think that I would say that's pretty safe. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what the next big saga or whatever like in the MCU is going to be. I guess it might be Secret Wars, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, but if we go back to like what we've seen in the Infinity Saga, it took 3 phases to finish this job with Thanos. Is Kang gonna be like Thanos, or is the MCU changing and they're gonna wrap this story up in like one phase and then they move on to the next big bad, or will they introduce a second big villain inside phase 4, who will be the main villain in Avengers 6 ending phase 5, etc. That's how do you see that, Taylor?
It's really hard to say at this point. I think Kang's going to be around for a few years at least, as whether, you know, and I don't even know how they're going to break down the phases at this point, obviously. We're in phase 4, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, and like you pointed out, some of it probably won't have anything to do with Kang at all, and quite a few of the big items probably will have something to do with Kang, and we know Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is like one of the last things that we know of that's coming out.
February 2023. After that, we only know Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is coming out in May 2023. We don't even know when the shows are planned for 2022 yet, actually.
Right.
The Disney Plus shows. They have been announced, but at what time they will come out, nobody knows.
Right. Is Kang going to be in Moon Knight? Who knows? But if I had to venture a guess at this point, I think Quantumania will be the finale for Kang. And again, that's just a guess based on virtually no information at this point.
Okay. Lord Defman?
I, like my fellow champions, am at a loss here. I don't know how long Kang is going to be around. I do know that he's probably going to play a big part as an overarching villain through a couple of movies and TV shows. I can tell you what I do know. He won't be around as long as Thanos was. We're not going to go through like a 10-year arc of Kang, right? They're probably going to want to make this a bit more compressed, because they've learned a lot from the way Thanos got introduced. So that much I can probably say with a high degree of confidence. I think another thing that you can say is that he will test many different heroes. So you might see him end up in Doctor Strange. You might see him in Spider-Man. You're going to feel his influence on those movies if you don't see him directly. And looking at phase 4, I remember looking at the slate and saying, wow, you know, I'm glad that they're introducing all these exciting new characters, but this really feels like phase 1 all over again, right? We're doing origin stories. We're bringing in a lot of new characters, but I think that they're trying to sort of up their game. And there's always this escalation you have to think about while they're doing that phase one sort of introduction of all these characters, they're also going to test those characters against an overarching villain. They're going to try to put all that together, which is a really difficult balancing act. But I think that's what I can also say definitively about where they're going with Kang. And just a quick note about escalation in general, right? Like, this is something that's a part of consumer demand. I don't think that that's Kevin Feige saying, you know what, I did Thanos and you know what, he kind of snapped away half the universe. What's bigger than that? You know, like, what can I blow up that makes a bigger explosion than killing half the people in the universe? I don't really think, you know, that's Kevin alone. I think he's responding to the way most of the fans think. They had a Thanos and now they're like, oh, what's next? You know, that's generally how people think in many franchises. Each movie is bigger and more bombastic than the. Do I like that? I mean, sometimes it works, but most times, if I'm honest, it probably doesn't. And that's why we're going multiversal now with Kang, because escalation.
Yeah. Well, you know, I always think back about the summer of 2018. Yeah, you had that major movie, Infinity War. It ended with a snap, and half the universe get dusted. They close it down. I was actually kind of upset when I walked out of the theater. So, from what the hell did I just see? And then we got Ant-Man and the Wasp. Nice little small movie, which cleansed my palate. And actually, it was exactly what I needed. So, I think bigger is not always the way to go. Sometimes you need those small, grounded, low stakes, but still fun movies or series in between, just to, you know, lighten the mood a bit. I mean, and well, Paul Rudd always lightens the mood, but that's another story. Taylor, you had a follow-up comment before I go to this?
Yeah, pretty much the same comment you just had. Bigger is not always better, especially when you're talking about universe-ending stakes here. You can't, like I said, you just can't get bigger than that. It just gets ridiculous. And like I said, like you just pointed out, Ant-Man and the Wasp and other small stories are just as good as those big stories. Not saying never have a big story, but again, doesn't that mean it's going to be better just because it's bigger?
Exactly. Biz, how do you see? How long will Kang stay in the MCU? According to you?
Yeah, it's very hard to say. I mean, I believe Loki would be well, like, obviously we're going to get a Loki season 2, and that'll probably be next year, and then I think that leads on to like Doctor Strange 2, I believe. I mean, am I getting the dates right here, or?
We don't know when Loki season 2 is coming out. We don't know anything about 2022. We do know that Loki is coming out, joining Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which comes out in March of 2022.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I guess.
So that's fairly early, right after Hawkeye, basically.
Yeah, so I guess Loki would have to be like released like a little bit before then. But yeah, I guess, I mean, if Kang is already introduced here, we're going to get Kang and Loki season 2, so obviously you're going to have something to do with Doctor Strange, and then possibly Spider-Man, like if the multiverse rumors are true with that, like in terms of like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. He could go for like, it's hard to say. It could go for like be another Thanos type villain. It could be like for 1.5 phases instead of like 3 phases. Because Kang he's such a ridiculous huge kind of villain, because he spans time, he spans multiverses. It's hard to say how much he'll affect everything. Like, yeah, who knows? It's hard to say, really.
We will just have to wait and see. Well, that was our breakdown. What we think will be the immediate future of the MCU, at least for as far we can predict. Mr. Feige will probably, if he ever sees us, laugh at what we are saying, but we tried.